giving me this nice opportunity of first of all meeting you and then giving me a chance to make a presentation among the learned audience. My approach towards human dignity is from the philosophical aspect or the philosophical perspective, and I would like to see the problem both from Indian as well as Western standpoint. And towards the later part of my talk, I would like to emphasize how in India the concept of human dignity is seen or approached. Here I have taken one important social reformer, Dr. Ambedkar of the 20th century, who was mainly concerned about the downtrodden or the neglected people of India. And also I have seen the problem from Indian perspective, namely that how, for example, human rights is discussed in Indian context. So let me go to the paper. Now the first question which comes to one's mind is, who is a man or a woman? Or let us ask the question, who is a human person or human being? He or she a mere psychophysical organism? Or can we say that he or she is just a physical entity? Or how do we define it? Because in philosophical discourse, we always make a distinction between a person, which quite often philosophers use, and a biological human being. This distinction is maintained in philosophy, because philosophers are always fond of using the term person rather than a biological human being. This we can see in John Locke's philosophical discourse. John Locke defines person, human person, as a thinking, intelligent being that has reason and reflection and can consider itself as itself the same thinking thing in different times and places. I would say that this is a very beautiful definition of a human person, and not only in Western tradition, in Indian philosophical tradition also, the concept of person is seen in a broader perspective. For example, the word Purusha, Sanskrit word, it is a Sanskrit word, the word Purusha is used in order to define a human being. Here, not only the body, but also the self is included in the word Purusha. The idea of personhood is important in ethical discourse also. We have been using the term person or personhood in ethical discourse or ethical dialogues also. For example, the moralists hold the view that person have a special value, that is, human beings have a special value, and that they deserve moral respect. Each and every individual must be treated on par with other. This is what we mean by the moral respect. Since a person is different from a biological being human, that is, being a member of the Homo sapiens, does not automatically qualify one for the special kind of moral respect due to us. Because this concept of being human is one of the important themes that is discussed in philosophical discourse. In fact, the recently held the 24th World Philosophy Congress held in Beijing, China, they had this concept, the concept of being human is something very important for them, and so this was the major theme that is discussed in China. So, I would like to state some philosophers, both in India and the West, how they have analyzed the concept of person. One important philosopher, of course, is Immanuel Kant, who argued that persons are primarily characterized by their rationality, and so they have an intrinsic value, which means all human beings have the intrinsic value, that is dignity, which makes them valuable. So the concept of human dignity has been playing a very important role in philosophical discourse, and there are many evidences which we can point out. For example, Immanuel Kant and Indian side, one text I have taken, being a Tamilian, I am always fond of quoting Tamil text. This is a text called Tirukkural. This is an ethical code which was written during the 2nd century AD. And that text, the Tamil text, Tirukkural says, a man who has 5 noble qualities, namely love, sensitivity, altruism, compassion, and truthfulness, is considered to be a human being. So they give the definition of a human being. Who is a human being? So a human being must have all these qualities: love, sensitivity, altruism, compassion, and truthfulness. These are the characteristics which characterize a human being. Now, one of the principles of human dignity is to accept the other. Most of the time we fail to accept the other. That is the reason why we have a lot of problems or social evils. We are not ready to accept the other. That's why in the Western tradition, especially in the 20th and 21st century, we are talking about the notion of accepting the other. For example, Levinas argues that my existence depends on the existence of the other. My existence is meaningful provided the other is there. So we have to accept the other. This means that one must be ready to accept the other's values and rights. If I think my rights alone are important and if I neglect the rights of the other, then I am not a human being. So if you look at the ancient Greeks, they have made a distinction between physics, that is nature, and law or custom. Now Aristotle actually made a very beautiful distinction between the natural as well as the legal justice, because I feel that the concept of human dignity has a close link with justice. That is, we always make a distinction between natural justice and legal justice, but I am more concerned about one more concept of justice, that is social justice, which I will be discussing now. He had a theory of natural rights that serves as the basis for the recognition of rights. Though Indian systems do not develop such a conception of natural rights, because we in India, we don't have the concept of natural rights as such, it is obvious that there is no quarrel with the view that all human beings have natural right to be treated in certain ways, and that they possess this right both within the political and pre-political conditions. Though they are not the Indian philosophical tradition or political understanding, it does not make a distinction between this legal justice and natural justice. Natural justice is already included in our constitution. Then, the concept of justice, which is very much essential for understanding the concept of human dignity, has these important perspectives. One is social justice, economical justice, political justice, and gender justice. And all these are very important in the context of human dignity. And for a prosperous country, we always believe that all these points, all these perspectives must be taken together. So, a country should promote social justice, which is very important, equality and integration to ensure the participation of all in democracy. This is what is retained, or this is often maintained in Indian constitution. So social justice is meaningful, provided our democracy is meaningful, where there is equality among the people of India. And similarly, there should be socio-economic and political equality and justice among all. And Indian constitution proudly ensures that all its citizens have equality, fraternity, and justice. And political and economic justice has no meaning apart from social equality. We may talk about economic justice, we may talk about political justice, but if there is social equality among people of the country, then all these concepts are meaningless concepts. So, What is the presupposition? The presupposition is all men are equal by birth. There is no distinction between one and the other. We cannot categorize some people as higher and some people as lower. So that's why we say that all men are equal by birth. Right? Then the social stratification based on caste and community has no meaning. Now, when I say this, I keep the Indian social stratification at the backdrop where there is a hierarchy. So it is necessary that we have to democratize the knowledge system, wealth, rights and freedom. Now this I would like to emphasize, that is democratize the knowledge system. The knowledge system is not meant for a few. It is meant for the entire society. So this is emphasized in the constitution, but what is happening is something different. So Plato, for example, argues that justice is the same for both the individual and the state. There is no distinction, according to Plato, between the individual and the state. So it is a harmony of the virtues of temperance, courage and wisdom. In fact, Plato says that since the state is made up of the individual, what is a state? This is a question which is raised by Plato in his book Republic, and he says the state is nothing but the collection of individual, or the state is made up of individual. So it will be necessary for each of these virtues to be attained by each person. So justice is often identified with equality, and it is necessary for the existence and prosperity of a country. So the country's prosperity is dependent on the equality and is necessary for the existence. So this is in the present context of socio-economic economic equality and justice, Thiruvallur, that is the author of the Tamil text which whom I mentioned, that is Thirukural. The author Thiruvallur is relevant because his text speaks about the equality of all. In fact, the Tamil word which he has used is Pirappukkum Ella Uyirkum. This is what he means, which means the English translation goes like this: by birth, each and every individual is equal to the other. So he says that because his text speaks about the equality of all, the society which is unequal on the basis of haves and have-nots, and higher and lower, needs the philosophy of Thiruvallur for its emancipation. In fact, I feel that the concept of human dignity is closely connected to what we call social emancipation. So proper political justice will be rendered by the rulers if they take into account the welfare of the people, so that there will be peace and prosperity. Now, I would like to throw some light on Indian Constitution. The Indian Constitution, which has two broad mandates to the Parliament, and it has got two important principles. One is not to take away or abridge certain rights described as fundamental rights. This means the fundamental rights cannot be violated. No individual or no group or no society or no religious tradition can take away the rights which are fundamental in nature. So that's the reason why we say it is fundamental by nature. And secondly, to follow certain principles described as directive principles of state policy, and both are interrelated. So the social and economic obligations of the state are to protect the rights of the citizens. So what is the duty of the state or the government? The government duty is to protect the individual, and the ancient text, Arthashastra, it is a text, he says, I quote, the king shall provide the orphan, the dying, the infirm, the afflicted and the helpless with maintenance. So it is the duty of the government to protect these people. He shall also provide, the government should also provide subsistence to helpless expectant mothers and also children they give birth to. I think the Arthashastra gives a beautiful understanding of a socio-political philosophy which is necessary for this century. So it is the duty of the government to render social justice to everybody. And I will skip, I have quoted the American Declaration of Independence. Skip this. And similarly, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that whereas it is essential if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to be rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. So all men and women, everyone in the world are entitled to the rights and freedom contained in the declaration without any discrimination. Yesterday we have been discussing that in detail, and our friend Daryl has very beautifully explained this. So the human rights contain the Universal Declaration, which may be divided into two categories, the civil and the political rights. I'll skip that. Then I'll come to the economic justice. Economic justice is also very important for the prosperity of a country. Now here I would like to quote Amartya Sen. Amartya Sen says that the economic justice will be meaningful in a society only when equal opportunities are available to all. When there is equal opportunities which are available to all. He says, I quote, a child who is denied the opportunity of elementary school is not only deprived as a youngster, but also handicapped all through life. I think this is a very beautiful quotation, wherein Amartya Sen very clearly shows how we should protect a child who is denied of the opportunity to go to school. Now similarly, the Article 39 of Indian Constitution also talks about that, no doubt. It said a state which takes care of its citizens is known as a welfare state. All these are in the Constitution, no doubt, but what is happening in reality is something different. So according to Amartya Sen, there is no conflict between political freedom and economic performance. In fact, he quotes this in his well-known book, The Development as Freedom. And he says we have to see the impact of democracy and the political freedom on the lives and capacities of citizens. So there is a connection between freedom and democracy in India, no doubt. This means that political freedom in the form of democracy helps to safeguard the economic freedom to survive. I'll skip some of the slides to save time. I've given the definition given by the well-known sociologist McIver. Amartya Sen further shows that political freedom in the form of democracy helps to safeguard the economic interests. This Foucault also talks about human dignity. In fact, he says that one of the aspects of the government, now actually he examines what is the duty of the government. The duty of the government is the pastoral care. That means looking after the sick, the needy, and the morality of the people. These functions should not be performed by the bureaucrats, since it is nothing but disguised guard for power. I feel that Foucault's understanding of culture as well as the political power is something really remarkable. I'll skip this now. Yeah, the principle of social justice is to be considered as fairness. Now this is from the theory of justice. The main problem with the so-called higher caste, now I am coming to Indian situation, the main problem with the so-called higher caste, I quote higher caste, is lack of tolerance. They are not ready to tolerate the other. They are not ready to give human dignity to the other. So the inclusion of the other is not possible in the case of the higher caste. The inclusion of the other, which means we are not ready to accept the other. So here I would like to apply the methodology of Habermas, Rorty and Gadamer, very, very, short description of this I would like to give. Habermas, for example, a well-known sociologist and philosopher, talks about the inclusion of the other and the symmetrical understanding, which is very useful in this context. Now Habermas talks about most of the time we fail to understand the other, we are not giving equality to the other because there is always an asymmetrical relation between me and the other. I don't treat my friend as equal to me. This is a symmetrical relation is absent. There is always asymmetrical relation. So that's the reason why Habermas says that we have to develop a symmetrical understanding. A symmetrical understanding, equal relation that exists between me and my friend. This is what he calls as emancipatory interest. In fact, he talks about 3 kinds of interest. I am not discussing that. So, in emancipatory interest, there is always a movement from what is or what ought to be, from what is to what ought to be. What is our present situation and where should we move? So, this what ought to be is something which is very important, and this we have to move to this direction. Now, similarly, Richard Rorty also talks about how solidarity is very much essential. We, the concept of we, according to him, is very important. Okay, that now I will come to one important thing that some of you may know the person, Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar's approach, he emphasized the need for social emancipation. Like Habermas, he also talks about the social emancipation. Now it is the emancipation, it is not the emancipation of a few, but emancipation, here we can say liberation, of course. Liberation of all. So each and every individual should be liberated. Now this liberation here means a social liberation. Okay. Now he played 3 important roles. He lived between 1891 to 1956, and he was a Dalit leader. He was an untouchable spokesman, because the 4th category of Hindu society, they are known as untouchables. They are Dalit, they are subaltern people. All kinds of names are ascribed to them, and national statesman. So in his first role, he was a guide, guru and decision maker for the untouchable. The untouchables are able to live peacefully, and to some extent they are treated on par with the others because of the guru, or because of Ambedkar. And as an untouchable spokesman, he supported the scheduled caste people. He worked for the constitution also. From the works and writings of Dr. Ambedkar, one can derive the following principle. This is how human dignity is operating in his discourse. The untouchable should revolt because they are slaves, and slavery is inhuman. They are treated as slaves. Though we say slavery is abolished, still they are treated as slaves, and slavery, of course, we know it is inhuman. There is no racial difference among human beings. We cannot make a distinction between one individual and another in the name of caste. So if Hindu scriptures support this, then these scriptures should be rejected. So he was bold enough to say that if the scriptures, if the higher caste quote the scripture by saying this is available in the scripture, then he says discard those scriptures. Only by acknowledging their slavery, by admitting their inferior position, could the untouchables have a peaceful life. So only untouchables could understand their condition and their need, and hence only untouchables themselves should lead their movement. Now this is a very beautiful point. In fact, in many seminars, when I talk about the Dalits and the downtrodden people, the question that is raised is, how can you speak about them? Because they say only the Dalits. This is like a feminism. They say only a woman can talk about feminism. In fact, initially I was writing on feminism. Then one of my friends said, don't write on feminism. And why? Because they said, no, it is not your area. Then of course, women also, when I talked to them, they said, sir, we know our problems better than you. I said, yeah, but I am also with you. I am also fighting for you. But they are not ready to accept. So it is something like that. So education and politics are the chief means of equality. So Ambedkar's view on the origin of untouchability is presented in his book, published in 1948, very important book, The Untouchables. He decided to reject all claims of Hinduism and convert to another religion, namely Buddhism. He was fond of Buddhism because in Buddhism, it is said that there is no caste distinction, there is equality, there is love and compassion, and we always love the other. So in 1956, he converted to Buddhism in an attempt to link the untouchables to the greatness of India's past. And he had great admiration for Buddha, Kabir and Mahatma Phule. And he argued that only by converting himself into Buddhism, the human dignity which is lost was regained. So, let's skip some of the. Scholars argue that human rights became an important issue in philosophical thinking during the Industrial Revolution, and I want to go to Indian conception. With this background, let me quickly analyze how Indian conception of human rights is discussed. That is in the traditional as well as a modern perspective. In fact, I must tell you that the concept of human right is not available in Indian tradition. In fact, in one of the seminar, one of my close friends who edited a book, he wanted me to write on Indian philosophical understanding of human rights. And I couldn't get any material. But in spite of that, I wrote a paper. So let me see how I work, and perhaps you are the right persons to say whether my approach is right or wrong. So we shall also see how in India human rights are preserved. So we have to see whether ancient Indian tradition had the concept of natural rights. I'll go quickly. In ancient society of the Hindus, rights and duties were always connected, because in Hindu philosophical discourse, we always club these rights and duties. In fact, we don't have the concept of right as such, we have the responsibility, otherwise duties. That is the reason why I quickly go. Mahatma Gandhi, for example, he said, if all of us perform our duties well, then he said, rights will not be far to seek. That's what he said. So in India, the notion of human rights has occupied in a different way because of foreign rule. Contemporary thinkers like Swami Vivekananda and others who supported the cause of freedom reconciled the metaphysical freedom. This is what they were saying. They were applying the metaphysical understanding of freedom to the modern view of liberty, and Swami Vivekananda said, to advance towards freedom, physical, mental and spiritual, and help others to do is the supreme prize of man. These social rules which stand in the way of the unfoldment of this freedom are injurious and should be encouraged, by which men advance in the path of freedom. So there are other thinkers like Lokmanya Tilak who fought against the British. He said freedom is the very life of the soul which is identical with God. And Indian thinkers have taken conscious efforts to blend the ancient concept of freedom. I'll skip this. And then, the concept of freedom accords priority or duty over rights. And of course there are thinkers who have talked about that. Important text, Bhagavad Gita also says that man's only right is to do duty. That's what Mahatma Gandhi also said, or to perform action without a consideration of its fruits. This is called a nishkama karma, which means you perform the action only for the sake of action. This is quite often Bhagavad Gita is compared to Kant, Immanuel Kant. So Nishkama Karma Yogi is one who has to perform his duty without expecting the result from it. So this shows that rights and duties are always interrelated. It is because rights can be enjoyed only in relation with others. A person cannot have rights unless others accept it and create conditions for him to enjoy it freely. This means that rights always presuppose duty. This is what is emphasized in the Indian. But others will not admit it unless I assure similar rights to them. So it implies that the nature of their obligation is determined by the content of their right. So man's duty follows from his rights and not vice versa. I'll go to the last one. And one important Supreme Court justice, that is Justice Krishna in his book deals elaborately, and with this I conclude. And he says that the strategies for deliverance for the weaker gender have to be evolved. New perceptions and conceptions geared to the goal of women's welfare is our task. Goals have to be defined. He says, I quote, with this I stop, the women must take a pledge that they will not vote only for a party, they will vote only for a party which sets up the largest number of credible women candidates, which spells out the time-bound, action-oriented programs of India. So with this, I would like to stop and I welcome questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sivanandam. We are so impressed about your presentation that is clear and distinct and very well-round upon the concept of justice and equality. And I would like to ask you about Dr. Empeka. I heard that he is a leading thinker. He's a leader of many Hindus who turn out to be the Gentile, who turn out to be a Buddhist in India. Is that correct? Yeah. He was a Hindu before then. And what leads him to convert himself into Buddhism?
Initially he was a Hindu, no doubt, but he got fed up the way in which the ritualistic practices that were going on in Hinduism, that's one thing. And secondly, the way in which the hierarchy is maintained. This was the biggest problem in India. Even now it is happening. Though by constitution we are trying to avoid it, but even now, in some place at least, we can say that the hierarchy is maintained. And he was fed up with this sort of hierarchy. He said, how can you say that one group of people are superior and there is a fourth category of people who have to serve others? So they are like slaves. So he was against this mode of understanding the social stratification of India. That made him to convert himself to Buddhism. That which has made a tremendous impact. He said, I don't want to be a Hindu anymore. Though, in fact, he made a statement like this, though I am born as a Hindu, I will not die as a Hindu. So, because he says in Buddhism, there is no hierarchy.
As I understand that right now the number of Buddhists in India has risen.
It has now, the number has increased, I would say.
Right.
The many are converted
to percentage. What is the percentage of the Buddhists?
Buddhists, I don't know exactly, but I would say that perhaps 10%. But I'm not sure. I may be wrong also, I don't know. But there is always a tension. But people think that the best way to come out of Hinduism is the only solution, the only way by which they can get their identity and they get back their dignity.
Well, how would your country solve the problem of education and equality of rights? Because in my country we have the same problem, the problem of education and inequality of man.
This is a very important issue. We have not solved the problem, and I don't think that we can solve the problem. Why? Because education, of course, we are trying to educate everybody. But what happens is the poor people, the poor children, they can't afford to pay a huge money to join a big convent and all that. And so they naturally go for a government, school or government aided school, where they get education, no doubt, but that cannot be on par with the private education which the rich people get. So there is the problem. So when there is a competition comes, for example, when there is a medical entrance exam or engineering entrance exam, naturally these people can compete. They can score good marks. I have seen in many villages, they don't know anything. They only know the textbook. The boys and girls, I have visited many villages, they know only the textbook. They read it very well. And you won't believe that they get very high marks in the public examination. You see that irony. They get a very good examination. They score even 95%. Okay. But their medium of instruction is Tamil, say mother tongue. So they get through in that. But when they write the entrance examination, they find it difficult. Because the syllabus is high, so they cannot compete. So one way which the government is trying to solve the problem is they give some concession, some reservation for the downtrodden people. Now this way the government is trying to uplift the people. But even then, it is very difficult. No, the pathetic situation of the Dalits and the scheduled castes and the downtrodden is something really remarkable.
When you mean the Dalit, they are the lower class?
Yeah, unfortunately they are considered as lowest class. Yes, lowest class. So this is
Thank
a
you very
basic
much.
problem,
Yeah, right.
but no, we are trying to solve the problem, but it's very difficult.
Our country, we have the same problem, but in a small scale. And yet, it's a big problem in the future. And I would like to open the...
Yeah, in fact, I would like to add one more thing.
Yeah.
This is called a reservation policy. Reservation policy. Now that is now for the downtrodden and a person who is not properly educated. No, they give some concession so that they can be. A beautiful example is given by our political leaders, those who support that. Now assume that a father and a child, they are coming to witness some show that is going on, and it is crowded. So the boy cannot see that. So what the father does is, he just lifts this boy and shows the show that is going on. It is something like that. Reservation is something like that. But there are a lot of opposition to this reservation, because no, you can't ask a person who is an athlete to run with a lame person or physically the same person. No, it is not possible. But this kind of education pattern, if we can develop a uniform educational pattern system, then it's fine. But there is a hierarchy there itself. Then how can you say that one is equal to the other?
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's very, very enlightening. And we can see all the problems. Yeah.
Questions. Right now in India, 0.8% people are Buddhist, and Muslim is the second. Is a Muslim 13.4%.
What you said before, Buddhism is 8%?
0.8%.
0.8.
Yeah.
Very low.
And that is decreasing.
Yeah, right. Thank you. I would like to open the question to the floor. Anyone want to ask a question, please? Yes, please, Nadia. Yeah.
About Buddhism in India, it's a very basic question. I'm sorry for this, but what I want to know is that the Buddhism originated from India thousands of years ago, and I thought it died down later in India, but now still some 0.8% of population are Buddhist. Are they related to the original ancient Buddhism, or it's something newly appearing in?
Yeah, actually the Buddhism that is practiced is known as Neo-Buddhism. Neo-Buddhism is nothing but the Buddhism which is introduced or practiced by Ambedkar and his followers. But there is a revival of Buddhism. Recently also the Buddhists met in different parts of the country, and they were fed up with many of the ritualistic practices that is going on. So the number slowly will increase. But there are certain difficulties also, because Buddhism. Why? One question I thought you would ask this question: that why Buddhism, which is founded in India, why it is driven away? I don't know whether I am permitted to use the word. See, the reason is that one reason is that the Buddhism has a hardcore principles which was not possible for a Hindu to practice. No, Hinduism, it contains a lot of ritualistic practices, and people are just happy with that. So they think that by following certain ritualistic practices, they can attain liberation. Buddha life is very simple, actually, And there is also another reason why they say that Buddhism was not that much prevalent in India. That is, he starts with a pessimistic note, as somebody in the morning was saying. It starts with a pessimistic note in saying the world is full of suffering. But we have to understand that though it starts with a pessimism, it ends in pragmatism. Because they say that there is a way out from the suffering. So that is one of the reasons why Buddhism is not that much, once it was very popular in different parts of the country. But now, we have to say that Buddhism is declining, but once again there is a revival because of Ambedkar and others. But the number is very, very small. But slowly it might change also.
Okay, so talking about the region where they are and also the tradition, it's not necessarily related to the original Buddhist, but it's a revival of the neo-Buddhism. That is the
Yeah, there is a distinction between the original Buddhism and the new Buddhism, but not very major changes that are, practiced in new Buddhism.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rishi, for your presentation. I do have a question about the fundamental roots of the universal right or dignity of humans in India. I came across quite many of the intellectual scholars who claim that the casting system was a colonial construct, not originated, not actually rooted in the Indian society. It was later created by the British colonialism in order to create a divide and rule capabilities to dominate the society through the constructed stratification. To what extent do you agree or disagree with that discourse?
Yeah, thank you for a very important question. Now, initially, no doubt, this four classification of society, what we call the social stratification in India, was based on division of labor only. Okay, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras, these are the categories. Each group is assigned a particular job. For example, the Brahmins, the so-called Brahmins, their duty is to utter the mantras. No? They are to read the scriptures, to put it in simply. Then coming to the second, the soldiers, they have to fight in the battlefield, as you know. And the third, they are business people. And the fourth are those who serve the others. This is how it was done in the beginning. In fact, this is similar to Plato's classification of society into three. But what happened was, slowly it has become a caste-based society. During the 10th century onwards, it has a different connotation or different meaning altogether. So that was a basic problem. So of course the colonial rule also added to this problem. But even before that, it was there. It was there. But now one way of escaping from the situation is, one can say, there are many people who say, argue like that. They say, no, it is not like that. Previously, everybody was equal. But now I ask the question, what is the present situation? How do you treat me? That is more concerned. I am more concerned about that. Don't say, no, it was like that. No, what is the present situation? Isn't it? Exactly. So that is that we are living in the present world, not the past world, by saying, oh, everything was wonderful. No, that is not.
That's a better way to tackle the problem.
Yeah. Thank you.
David?
I had a small question. Maybe I don't need this. Once I thought that Buddhism is had this original idea of not discriminating between people. Then I read in a research paper, and this is one question. In that research paper, it said that in the area that Buddha lived, that hierarchy didn't exist, and because in that area it didn't exist, he never referred to it. Never used it. But in that area, for example, reincarnation was a common belief. But in other areas of India, that birthright existed, and so it continued. Is it correct or not? What do you know about?
No, I feel that this may not be right. I don't know because which you are referring to, but I feel
I can find it. It's a research paper.
It may not be right because I feel, of course, there are certain parallels which one can draw between Hindu philosophy and Buddhism. In fact, it came as a revolt to Hinduism.
That's what I thought.
That is there are certain ritualistic practices which was dominating in Hinduism, and there was also hierarchy between the castes. So Buddhism came as a revolt. So Buddha has to treat everybody as equal.
Yes.
And there are certain concepts. For example, Buddhist understanding of karma has got a different meaning altogether. Now in Hindu concept, if you say karma, it has got a different meaning. They say your present birth is because of the past birth. So what this means, if I am poor and if I am doing some menial job, they say, no, be happy because it is ordained by God. It is because of previous karma and all that one. This way of escapism is not acceptable to Buddhism. So there are certain principles which can clearly show how Buddhism is different from Hindu philosophy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Any more questions? So I think that is the end of the.
Thank you.
Thank you.